Hey everybody, my name's Tracy and I am here cooking with Co-op. Today what we're going to be doing is something similar to what you would do online where you would order a meal kit, it would show up at your door after you order it and everything and pay for it. We're going to be doing something similar but a little bit more local. So we are offering co-op meal kits that you would go to your local co-op Discovery Co-op here and pick up a bag of everything that you need all in one kit. So, if you don't know what you want to make that night, then you can just walk into the store, grab that kit, walk out, give it to your kids to cook because all of the instructions are all right on this card. So you can just sit back and relax while they cook you supper. And then what we're going to do is just offer these YouTube episodes so that you can cook along with me, or they can cook along with me, whoever wants to cook these meals, and just have a fun time and be able to learn a little bit about cooking throughout the process too. So what we're going to start with today is the chicken and ratatouille. So it is, obviously chicken and then tons and tons of vegetables. So you're getting like really good nutrition, really good fiber, really good fun family food, super colorful, super exciting. So we're going to start with that first. So what I have done here today is I've kind of gotten everything ready so that it's just there for me and available. And that way you're not like, it does get a little bit stressful when you're cooking sometimes, and especially if you're not really the chef of the family or anything, and then it gets really chaotic and you have things that are kind of going all over the place and you get a little bit flustered. So I really think one of my biggest tips is to just make sure you get all of your ingredients ready to go right at the very beginning, and then it's going to make your life so much easier throughout the recipe. The other thing I wanted to mention too, although we do have a recipe that we're following right now, it still is okay for you to change things depending on what your family likes. So maybe your family doesn't like garlic, for example, which would be crazy if they wouldn't like garlic because it's like the best thing ever. But then you can take the garlic out. So you really can just customize it to how you want to. So you really don't have to follow it to a T. And then the more that you cook, the more you're going to learn what you like and what you don't like, and you can kind of adjust things from there. So what I am going to do though first, I'm going to start browning my chicken. I always like to kind of think of my steps in a way so that I'm not wasting a minute, because we all know how crazy life can be. So I really just like getting my food cooked all at the same time and making sure I'm following the proper steps. And I really do like my chicken browned quite a bit because that's where the flavor is when you can get that really nice brown color on it. So what I'm going to do, actually, before we start anything, this is the part I always forget. Let's preheat our oven to 375. So just going to get this going here. And that way it's going to be ready when we're done getting everything ready to throw into the oven. And I'm just going to get my pan heated up. So get that going. I'm using a gas range. If you're using an electric stove, you're really going to want to start preheating that pan a little bit in advance to make sure that it's nice and hot, because you really want that chicken to kind of sizzle as soon as you put it in the pan. You don't want to put the chicken in when the pan's cold or anything like that. So because my gas stove, it's really going to heat the pan quite quickly. We don't really have to wait too long, but I would really suggest if you are using that electric range that you preheat that a little bit in advance. So we're going to put a little bit of I'm actually going to use avocado oil, but any type of oil that you like to use, whether it's olive oil, canola oil, whatever you prefer. We're just going to do a tablespoon of that, just kind of a couple turns of the pan. And then I'm going to season my chicken. So this is a very important step. If you don't do this right now, you're going to have kind of bland chicken. It's not something that you want to do after. You always want to season it before. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt on it. And we're going to start skin side down. So I'm just doing the skin side first. A little loud. A little bit of pepper. I'm going to get my tongs. My really big tongs. And first I'm just going to check to make sure that my pan, I put my hand over top of it just to feel how hot it is. Feels like it's getting nice and warm. Okay, so we're gonna put all of these chicken legs skin side down. You kind of want to organize it in a way that you can fit them all properly without crowding them too much. There we go. We got room for one more here. Okay. So while that is browning, what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting up our vegetables. I'm going to start with the ones that we're going to saute first, and then that way those will be ready, and just kind of keep making sure that I'm doing everything in the steps that I'm supposed to be doing. So when I look at the recipe in advance, just going to turn this down a little bit, then I do see that we want to make sure that we're chopping up the onion and the eggplant first, because those are going to be the ones that we're going to saute. I'm probably going to just cut up the whole thing. That's another thing with recipes, is you just never really know when they say like a cup or a teaspoon, and you just don't really know how much. It's really your preference of what you want to be cooking. And I like onion, it's the flavor of the meal, so I'm putting it all in. So I cut it in half, I'm cutting the tops off. This is one of my tips that I like to use, is I have a garbage bowl right next to where I'm cutting things up. And that way you have a nice clean surface space. And then I'm just gonna peel off that top layer of the onion, just like that, and put it right into my garbage bowl. So how I like to cut my onions is I keep this bottom part intact. And then that way, what I do is I start just making little cuts down the whole onion, almost to the bottom. Watch your fingers, make sure you're being really safe. And then once that's done, then I can cut this way, and it gives me a really, really nice dice. It's a really, really quick way of cutting up these onions. I do this quite a bit, and then you can get it done so fast. Toss this little guy in the garbage bowl. And we're gonna do the same on the other side. Like that. And you've done that onion in no time. So I've got another bowl here set aside that I'm just gonna put the onion into it so that we're ready to go when it's turned to go into the pan. And I'm gonna cut up this really pretty eggplant. I love eggplants just because their color is so nice. And they're good too. They're a good vegetable, but I just love the deep purple color. When you see the color in your food, it really makes you wanna eat it. It makes it really exciting. So I'm just going to cut this in half. And then it all depends on how chunky you want your vegetables to be, but because we're gonna be putting this in the oven later, you really want it to hold up. So I'm going to be making sure that I'm giving it, I would say I'm gonna do it about that big. A chunk just like that. And of course, all your preference. There's no rules in your own kitchen. I think we should check on the chicken. Let's just see how it's doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it over and just check to see. I would like it a little bit more darker brown than this, so I'm just going to let it sit for a little bit longer. And actually, while we're here, before I forget, I am going to season the other side of the chicken. All about the seasoning. Gotta make sure that you're bringing out all of the flavors that chicken has with the seasoning. Okay. We're gonna let that cook a little bit longer. We're gonna keep cutting up this eggplant. Okay. Eggplant isn't something I really grew up with eating a lot, but it really is fun to just get a little adventurous with your vegetables and change it up a little bit. It is a really meaty vegetable too, so a lot of vegetarians like to have it just because it just kind of has a bit more of a, not a meat, well, kind of a meaty texture. It's just a different type of vegetable. It's really good. I'm just gonna toss that in the bowl. And then we're gonna continue cutting up some more vegetables here. So we'll start with the peppers. Again, I'm gonna be using all of the vegetables. I'm gonna use the full peppers. I'm not gonna like measure it out or anything like that. I like to live on the wild side a little bit. So the way that I cut my peppers is I just kind of slice down the side here, and I try to stay away from the seeds in the middle. And that way you get a nice clean cut on that side. And I do that all the way down the sides. And if you hit the seeds, it's okay. It's easy cleanup, but I just prefer not to clean up if I don't have to. So you can see there, I got that left. Sometimes I might just try and get as much as I can off of it, especially with the cost of groceries and stuff these days. It's nice to use up as much of the food as you can. I know on cooking shows a lot of times they'll keep this little white part in there, but I just like to cut mine out. That's just my own preference. It's all edible, it's all good for you, but it just isn't as crunchy as the rest of the pepper, so I just kind of cut that out. Now, I do think that it is time for us to flip this chicken over before we continue. You always want to use your ears, your nose, everything when you're cooking just to make sure that you know when to flip things over. It sounds and smells like it's probably about that time. It's, you know, a little sticky for me. Boy, that is all the good flavor in there. That way, and we're gonna brown it on the other side for a couple more minutes. So I'm gonna just slice my peppers lengthwise. I'm gonna just do a few like this and then just kind of fold them all together and cut them. Make sure you're not cutting them too fine, just because you wanna make sure that they do have a little bit of a crunch by the time they're done cooking in the oven. So yeah, you wanna make sure you're leaving it still a decent size. So just like that, and you do really want to try to keep them all uniform just so that their cook time is the same, but nobody's going to be like grading you on this or anything. So again, cut it however you like. See, look at, I cut into the seeds on that one, so I'm just going to dump it into my garbage bowl so I don't have a mess on my cutting board. Another good tip for cooking is making sure that your knife isn't dull. I know it kind of sounds more dangerous having a sharp knife than a dull knife, but with a dull knife, you're really putting a lot of pressure on it, and sometimes it can cause some more accidents than if your knife was sharp. So I did just give my knife a little sharpening before we started this, just to make sure that I'm being safe while I'm cooking, and it's also just a lot easier to make sure that you're getting through all of the cutting that you need to get through. Okay, look at all the pretty colors. I love the yellow and the red pepper together. And then when you match it up with that purple, we're almost done the veg prep. And this is something that you can do with your kids too, if they want to cut the vegetables while you're cooking the chicken. There's just so many different opportunities to have like good family time when you're cooking these meal kits together. Also, if you want to take pictures as you're going along and post them on social media, there is a little hashtag on the recipe card at the bottom, hashtag co-op meal kit. So feel free to share your pictures of you guys all having fun cooking your meals together and sharing your good time. And then the zucchini, just gonna chop the ends off, put those in our garbage bowl. I am going to just check on the chicken. I do think that we can probably take it off of the stove right now and start sauteing the onion and the zucchini just to get that started a little bit. So let's just pull it off right now. So I've got a little dish set aside. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these in a dish. Ooh. And it's okay if they're going to stack on top of each other for now, because we will be adding it all together with the vegetables later. There we go. Set that aside. So now we have all of this delicious flavor in this pan. You don't want to waste it. We're not going to use another pan for the vegetables. We're going to use the same one. And we're going to put the onion and the eggplant all in there. And it's going to soak up all of that really yummy chicken flavor. Get my spatula here. I'm just going to give it a little stir. Let these brown up for a couple of minutes. Break it all up. Give it a little shake like you're a chef. Okay. We're just going to let that go for a little bit. Now with that bowl that I had all the eggplant and the onions in, I'm going to just transfer these into the bowl just to give myself some more room on my cutting board. And then we're going to cut up our zucchini. The zucchini, I'm probably gonna cut up fairly chunky just because it can break down quite easily and get a little bit mushy. So I'm just gonna make sure that I'm keeping them like a fairly decent size. You know, I don't know if you can see what I'm cutting, but about that size. Just get that all ready to go. So what I did with this, actually, I made this to kind of practice the recipe before, just because I should get to know what I'm cooking before I tape it for you guys. And then the second day, rather, like I always like to kind of change up my meals, like my leftovers, rather than having the same thing, just to kind of keep it exciting. So what I did with it the second day is I took all the vegetables that we roasted up and I put it in a blender and blended it all together. I emulsified it with just a little bit of oil, and then I cooked some pasta and used it as my pasta sauce. So it was really delicious. Like, it was all the flavors that are the same thing that you would use in a pasta. So it's kind of fun to think of things like that to do with the leftovers if you have any. You guys might eat it all up, so. So the garlic, we're just gonna dice up. Now this is another ingredient here that you can use at your own discretion. Right now, I think it calls for a teaspoon or tablespoon of garlic. So I'm doing 2 cloves of garlic. I actually probably could do more. I love garlic. So I usually will like put quite a bit in my recipes. But again, if you don't really like it and if you find it to be a little too overpowering, then you don't have to put as much in. I'm gonna do 2 cloves, although I definitely could do more. You can never have too much garlic, depending on who you're meeting with after. You don't want to be too garlicky if you're going on a date or something. But we're gonna get this garlic all ready to go. And this is gonna be something that we're gonna saute last, just because garlic can burn quite quickly. So we're gonna add this in right at the very end of the sauteing process. I'm just gonna mix these around. They're browning up really nicely. So now I think it is time that we add the rest of the vegetables. Get those all in there. I'm gonna grab my salt and pepper. I'm all about seasoning every step of the way. You wanna make sure you're layering your seasoning through every ingredient that you have in the dish. So I'm gonna put some salt. And I like a lot of salt in my dishes. A little bit of pepper. We're just going to give us a good little mix here. Now look at how pretty. Like, all of those colors are so pretty. I just don't know how you couldn't be excited about eating this. It's gorgeous. Like the color of the rainbows right here. We're going to let those cook, and then we're going to add in this garlic. Because we're getting close to where we want to be here. Get every little piece of that garlic in there. And toss that around again. And you'll be able to smell the garlic right away. It's delicious. And then we've got our spice mixture here. So what we all have in here is the smoked paprika, and that's gonna give it a really nice smoky flavor. I put smoked paprika on a lot of things. It's just, when you smell it, it smells like campfire almost. So we've got a half a tablespoon of smoked paprika, tablespoon of basil, tablespoon of basil, a teaspoon of thyme, and then a teaspoon of oregano. So lots of like floral notes here, really, really strong flavors, but delicious when they're put all together. So we're gonna toss that in here too. Sprinkle that all around. Give this a good mix. It smells so good. Alright, let that cook for a couple of minutes. We're going to get the can of these diced tomatoes ready to go, because we're going to dump those in there and give that a little simmer. It's a really, really easy, straightforward recipe filled with tons of nutrition. It's just such a good family meal to have together. So we got our Co-op Gold tomatoes here. And these ones are stewed. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna dump this all into the vegetables that we have cooking already. Get everything out of there. Give that a good little mix. And we just want to bring this up to a slight simmer here. Just so that all the flavors can kind of get to know each other. Oh, it is such a fragrant dish. And pretty. Okay. Look at that. Doesn't that look yummy? I'm just going to turn this down a notch. We're really only going to let this simmer for a couple of minutes because the oven's going to do the rest of the work for us. So once we do this, we're going to toss it in the oven and then you just get to sit and relax, do the dishes together. That way when your meal is all ready to go, then your cleanup is all done and you can enjoy the rest of the night. So I've got my oven dish that we're going to be cooking everything in. So I'm going to grab our veg. And I am going to dump this right into that pan. Get that all in there. Okay, there we go. And then our chicken that we browned already. Just gonna flatten this all out just to make sure that we have a nice little bed for our chicken to sit on. And when this is gonna cook in the oven, those juices from the chicken are gonna go into the vegetables too and flavor that even more. So it's just going to be even better once it's all done. So we're just going to take our chicken. Make sure you're kind of staggering it so you can fit them all in. I'm just gonna use my hands because it's my kitchen and I can do what I want. And stick that guy in there. So we are going to transfer this into the oven. And like, I feel like this is a really impressive meal, even if you have friends over to like pull this out of the oven. I think it just looks really, really pretty. So we're just gonna pop this in. Okay, so we're gonna put it in the oven and we're gonna set our timer for, I'm gonna set it for 20 minutes. It says 20 to 25 minutes. I always go on the lower side, check it, just see if it's something, you know, that I need to keep in the oven for a little bit longer. We're gonna set our timer for 20 minutes. And now you can do some cleanup while we wait for the chicken to come out of the oven. Okay guys, the dish is ready to go. It's been baking in that oven, getting all those flavors together. Ooh, it looks really good. I'll use your hip. Check that out. I don't know, I think that's really like a showstopper when you're entertaining. Just looks so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the legs and then just set it on the plate. And then I'm going to set this over here. Make sure I don't burn myself. So I'm going to put on a little pot holder here. And then you're gonna take the vegetables that have all of the yummy flavors from the chicken as well. And we're going to just put it right on the other side of the dish here. And if the sauce goes all over, that's okay because the sauce and the chicken together are gonna be so good. Such a nutritious meal. If you're like me and had a really busy summer of lots of eating and drinking, you wanna start eating meals like this so that you can start getting healthy again. And just pile that on. And you know what? If you wanted to throw like say if you really would prefer to have a starch with your supper, you could make some rice and then serve rice with this too. But this alone is how I would serve it. And there you go. Look at all the colors. Everything's all really nice and pretty. And then when you cut your meat up and you can eat it along with your vegetables, it's just, it is a really nutritious and fun dish to eat together. So that is it for this episode. Make sure that you share those pictures and hashtag co-op meal kit just so that we can all see all the fun that you guys are having together. And I hope you join me for my next one. Thank you guys so much. Take care.